Thank you very much, Maharishi. There's a beautiful question here on Vedic cognition and a follow-up of a point Maharishi made last week. But first, perhaps this is a question that seems to be on many people's minds because the Associated Press reports this week on several recent brain studies showing that people with an active brain who have a good education, intellectually stimulating jobs, read books, etc., stay mentally alert and healthy throughout their life. And for that reason, doctors are now prescribing mental gymnastics to keep the brain active and healthy in later years. Would Maharishi please comment on how his Vedic techniques, such as Transcendental Meditation and the TM Siddhi program, can be used to exercise the brain to keep it healthy, or does it work on a completely different principle?
The principle is bringing the emptiness, nothingness, unmanifest, zero, to our conscious awareness. Our conscious mind should be held up in suspense in the unmanifest. No space-time boundaries there, nothing there, unmanifest. All that you call 0 point. 0 point motion. This is experience of the transcendental consciousness. You transcend all the relative experiences and let the mind be on its own self-referral intelligence. And that self-referral intelligence is hung up in its own self-referral non-relative, absolute state of unmanifest, complete unmanifest. And this experience only engages total brain. Any experience in space-time boundaries does not use total brain. The total brain only comes to function when the awareness of this transcendental wholeness, which is awareness of infinity, unboundedness, transcending all space-time boundaries. Unmanifest is the word, unmanifest. The example will be, all the waves of the ocean have settled down and the ocean is completely silent on itself. Experience of this engages total brain. Therefore, in order to have experience of unity, and unity means unified values of all possible diversities. So in that silence is the togetherness of all diversities, but in one state of unity. Experience of this transcendental consciousness alone, and 100 times underline the word alone, experience of this alone engages total brain. only in this experience of unboundedness, total brain comes to function. And when repeated experience of this comes to conscious mind more and more often, conscious mind becomes more and more using the full brain. And therefore, the use of full brain becomes a habit. And when the use of full brain, through this practice over and over again and again, it becomes a practice, it becomes habituated, then every thought will have some of this contained in the thought. The thought will be in space-time boundaries, but the flow of every thought will have the memory of that total unboundedness, and therefore every thought will be supported by total brain functioning. This is the procedure which we want everyone to have, and which we want parents of the children to give them from 10, 12, 15 years of age, so that in 2, 3, 4 years their conscious mind becomes habituated. Through practice, habituated. Habituated means habituation of the total brain functioning. It should become a habit. That means always, through every thought, day and night. If a thought comes, it comes on that level, utilizing total brain. It's so simple. Everyone who practices transcendental meditation, it's so simple. It's so simple. That is why we hope we should be able to have a few thousand people engaged in this, and that will be a perpetual situation in a country if the government does it. But the government doesn't seem to be coming forward, so we are creating such a situation. The only difficulty for us is that we want it to happen as soon as possible, so we spread up our performance in this country also, in this country also, in this country. If we focus on 1, 2, 3 countries, at least in those countries, we'll be quick. But that will not satisfy us. So we are going ahead with as much possibility as possible all around, and spreading our force, whatever it is, in all directions. Now the builders have come. We have involved builders in it. Then the builders will bring lot of money. Builders will bring, they will earn lot of money, and they will donate to our charitable organization, to world peace, nationally, internationally, and there will be lots of money, and we will be able to engage lots of people, and they will fly, and they will create coherence. With that coherence created, there will be more sensible thinking in the part of everyone in society, including government and all that. That is our program, and we hope we should achieve it quickly. We are all right on our way.
Several years ago, Maharishi began pointing out the hazards of modern medicine, and more recently, the flaws of democracy. Now suddenly the dangers of modern medicine are being reported everywhere, and there is growing awareness about the dangers of democracy. Now Maharishi has begun to highlight the hazards of the improper layout of homes and buildings. Based on past experience, I have no doubt that the layout of houses will soon become a big issue with the public as well. My question is, how can an enlightened person such as Maharishi anticipate in advance trends that no one else is able to see at the time? What are the mechanics of seeing or anticipating the future?
The future is dependent on the present. And every step we take on the basis of the present level of world consciousness. What natural law comes along, we take that step, and then take that step, and then take that step, because we go by natural law. Simple, unadulterated, simple, follow. We follow natural law, and all these, you have Dr. Hegel summarized all these years very beautifully in these three, four steps. This is actually happened. And how it happened? Naturally it happened. And naturally it happened. We have inaugurated Satyuga in the last full moon, and then it begins to happen. It should happen. And now in this Vastu, it must happen. Only gradually people should know. And our criteria is very simple. You look to your own city, your own streets. Don't have to go by that. Look to the houses in the east or north or south, and conclude yourself how long you want to remain immersed in difficulties. You have a freedom to do it. Diagnosis we give to the people themselves. They diagnose. And they decide how long they want to remain in that situation or quickly come out. In Ayurveda, there is a system of diagnosis by feeling one's own pulse. You feel your pulse and you know how much off balance the pulse is. So we say, in this case of knowledge, you can feel yourself. And you don't need anyone's opinion or advice. Look at it and then decide how long you want to remain in the mud. Or you rise above the mud like a lotus. The whole thing is so beautiful, huh? Come out of the mud, because nobody likes that. It's just a matter of the total atmosphere, which has a great influence on the individual. In the total atmosphere, we are aiming at purifying the total atmosphere, harmony, positivity in the national consciousness of every country, in the world consciousness through these big groups. And we are finding our way to create big groups, even though it's not happening so quickly, but we can attribute it to not lack of our effort, but to lack of the luck of the world. We have to hide somewhere. So we hide behind the logic that it is the lack of the world that's not going so fast. There we take refuge. If it's not going fast, we have a logic. It's the lack of the world. But it's enjoyable this way or that way. We are on the right way.
Yes, thank you very much, Maharishi. I think nobody can argue that the world has its own destiny, its own level of clarity, its own level of creativity, its own level of merit and destiny. And what Maharishi is doing, fortunately, is improving that destiny drop by opening awareness of people everywhere, millions and millions, to the field of total knowledge, total support of natural law, total purity, freedom from mistakes and problems born of mistakes. And it's happening faster and faster, and the world is transforming very, very quickly, I think we can say, in historic terms, unbelievably quickly. And I can share a few points of that as we close. I was hoping today with us we had His Excellency, the Prime Minister, Dr. Bevan Morris, who is, as I said, the Prime Minister of the global country of world peace, as well as the world's foremost educator and dynamic proponent of Maharishi's consciousness-based Vedic educational approach. His Excellency Dr. Bevan Morris is the chairman of the Board of Trustees and president of Maharishi University of Management in the U.S. and the award-winning Maharishi School of the Age of Enlightenment, where students experience absolutely unprecedented educational outcomes in every area of student life and student performance on the basis of the incorporation of Maharishi's Vedic educational approach, his Vedic technologies of consciousness into the educational setting. I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Bevan Morris, if he is with us today, to offer his comments on Maharishi's beautiful message and beautiful answers to the press today. Jai Gurudev, Your Excellency.
Jai Gurudev. Today Maharishi gave to the global press great hope for the future of the world, that we are already experiencing the rising dawn, and very soon it will be the bright sunshine of noon for a glorious world, for a peaceful and happy world. Maharishi said that globally we want a grand, unified world, and it's going to happen. And this great hope has come in the midst of his analysis of just how hopeless the world has been until now, until Maharishi brought this dawn of a glorious destiny to the human race. Maharishi explained that governments have been based upon man-made laws and not on the laws that run the entire universe, the constitution of the universe. And the result of such a system is that over the centuries there has been a constant search for better systems of administration. But each system of administration, one after the other, has been found wanting, has been found stupid, has been found to be a horrible failure. And the present systems that are being promoted in the world by very powerful destructive nations, the system of democracy, has also proven to be a divider of nations and a failure in producing an end to problems and suffering for the people everywhere. Maharishi explained, however, that when we speak to these governments and tell them this point, that their system is a failure, they are as if deaf. They hear nothing. Even if it is explained in the most profound scientific way, with scientific evidence, they are completely deaf to it. And Maharishi explained the reasons why the governments are deaf. First of all, so many of them have been subjected to damage to their brains through drugs and alcohol. They are taking poison in their food, poison in their medicine. And the buildings in which they are existing are always damaging to their fortune and to the clarity of their thought and their ability to understand. So they are uneducated people, poisoned and damaged by the buildings in which they live, which are built wrongly. They're built in such a way that they are not oriented to the directions, north, south, east, and west. They don't have the proper entrances. As a result, the buildings are destroying the fortune and the understanding of the government leaders of this age, and indeed of the whole population. This is the same story everywhere. So Maharishi, unfortunately, he faces the great challenge that he sees this so clearly. He knows very clearly what is happening that is causing all of the problems that the world faces, but the people are deaf to what he says. The governments are deaf. He said it's like they're running into the fire, and he's telling them, don't do that, don't go into the fire, you'll suffer. It's like they're running into hell, running into the gates of hell, and Maharishi is calling out to them, shouting out to them, along with Dr. Hegel and other great leaders of the world, and they are not able to hear the warnings and take advantage of this good advice. Maharishi said, though, that the only way that we can understand this, that this is the situation in which we find ourselves, is that this is related to the fate or the destiny of the world. Everybody in the world performs actions throughout their lives, and every action one performs has a reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. So everyone creates their own destiny. And everyone, as Maharishi said, there's an expression for that, everyone has to bear their own cross. It's just to say that whatever destiny you create for yourself, you have to live with it, you have to bear it. And unfortunately, because billions of people are there in the world creating an unfortunate destiny for themselves, so the world is deaf to this incredibly powerful knowledge to bring a glorious destiny to the human race that Maharishi has been offering for 50 years in the world. So what is the solution to that? Maharishi said, well, what can we do? It's, from that perspective, it's hopeless. They're deaf. Another analogy that Maharishi used in the past that I think is very colorful and appropriate to this, it's like playing beautiful music to a buffalo. A buffalo just falls asleep, no concept of what this is. Like speaking this great knowledge to the governments of the world. But Maharishi said, therefore, what we have to do is he is just doing whatever he can do. That is what he's been doing for 50 years. That is the program that he is continuing to do right now, to do whatever he can do in the world as he finds it. And the first and fundamental principle of what he has been able to do, that has already changed the world's destiny enormously, is he has given to the world a simple and marvelous technique called transcendental meditation. Really so just invaluable to the human race, that can allow any human being and any child in any school to experience the field which is zero or emptiness. That is the field which is transcendental consciousness, silent self-referral consciousness, beyond all the boundaries of space and time, the unbounded field of consciousness. This is the experience which alone, Maharishi said, underline alone, this experience alone awakens the total functioning of the human brain, and therefore the infinite potentiality of the human consciousness. Habituating oneself to that by practicing transcendental meditation and its advanced techniques, including the Transcendental Meditation Siddhi program, including yogic flying, habituating oneself to experience that unbounded ocean of consciousness, that transcendental consciousness, which is the self, and which is, from the physics perspective, is the unified field of all the laws of nature, the field of zero-point motion, the field in which the whole universe is floating. Habituating oneself to that, then the thinking becomes so powerful. This is what millions of people have begun to do. And by virtue of Maharishi's continuing to teach in the world, and all his teachers, millions and millions more are going to learn and begin to experience, until the whole world's population begins to experience this. Like Maharishi gave the analogy, like pulling the arrow back on the bow. You pull the arrow back on the bow, and then you release, and it goes powerfully to the target. You pull it back just a little bit, the arrow drops at your feet. This is the difference between education as it existed so far and consciousness-based education, where the children learn transcendental meditation. They learn to pull back the arrow very far, and then by pulling back the arrow, by bringing their attention back to the most powerful field of dynamic silence in their own transcendental consciousness, then when they think, it comes with huge power of the energy and intelligence of the transcendental field. And this is the level of thinking which is successful thought. This is the great power of thought that can be given to any child. They can gain the ability also at the same time, because this is the field of the totality of all the laws of nature, to be in accord with all the laws of nature, to be supported by total natural law, which is the administrator of the whole universe. Their thought can engender the support of this almighty power of the intelligence that runs the universe from this transcendental field of consciousness. And with students practicing this together, if not in government schools, then in private schools, through our own organizations, through our own sensible activity to take advantage of this, and through groups of individuals becoming professionals in this field, we can create such enormous coherence in the collective consciousness of the society, from the children's highly coherent brainwave functioning, utilizing their total brain, doing it all together, radiating that coherence throughout their city and their state and their nation. The coherence in national consciousness will be completely different. It'll be high coherence, high integration, And with that, the governments that now are all muddled up by all the stress and strain and inadequacy of the functioning of the brains of the population of their nation, the governments will be different. The governments will start to be awake, and the governments will start to do all those right things that Maharishi has been telling them to do, but because they are deaf in all of these different ways, they have not been able to hear and take advantage of that. So this is one thing. The other thing that we can do, Maharishi said, is we can begin to reconstruct the world. Actually begin to reconstruct all the buildings on earth according to these principles of Vedic architecture that is in harmony with natural law. This means to build everyone in the world a lucky house, a house that promotes the good fortune and the peace and the health of the inhabitants. Now all the houses in the world are creating such damaging influences to the people. Maharishi said, to know this, just look to your own city. See the streets with south-facing houses. You'll find so much more misery and failure and poverty on those streets. Those that face east, by contrast, will have so much more good fortune. And look to your own house. Members of the press, just think for a moment, which way does your house face? And what is that doing to your life? By changing from these houses that are violating the laws of nature to a good house, total transformation of the life of the person in the house can be achieved in a very easy way. When a house, Maharishi said today, is not built according to the proper directions, the cardinal directions, aligned north, south, east, and west to the true directions, not magnetic, but true directions, the wrong layout of the home offends the harmony of nature. And when every day living in your house, you are offending the harmony of nature, you can't soothe it and you can't overcome it. Natural law is a very powerful force. It's powerful enough to run billions of galaxies. And if you are mischievous and you offend that great force, you don't follow those principles of living in accord with natural law according to the orientation of your house, you will have, Maharishi said, no grace with natural law. You will have no support of natural law. Moving into a Vastu house, there will be a rise of wealth, of peace, of bliss, of the family blossoming, of the children not falling sick. All of these things will come by moving into a lucky home. And this is true. It's not only true for the whole population generally. Maharishi specifically pointed out that those who teach his programs, they have also been shadowed and clouded by being in these wrong buildings. So it's been very hard for them to achieve what they set out to achieve and to continue teaching full time. So Maharishi also is telling all of the teachers of transcendental meditation, they must vacate any buildings that are wrongly oriented and get into Vastu, new buildings that are built according to these Vastu principles. Architecture in harmony with natural law, Vedic architecture, peace palaces everywhere, following these principles, and schools and colleges and universities. Everything that is required for the world's peace must be in these kinds of buildings only. This is what Maharishi is advising to all his own people throughout the world who are teaching on his behalf. And he gave a very good point about this, that actually the builders are there in the world and they're building. Only they're building wrongly and damaging the people for whom they build. Very easy for the builders to build correctly, to just orient the buildings correctly. And by doing so, by building marble peace colonies and all these other Vedic buildings for peace in the world, they can make good profits continuously in the reconstruction of the world and have enough, also be fulfilled by giving fortunate houses to the people, and have enough money so that they can give charitably to the support of the peace-creating groups in the world and the construction of all the facilities for the peace-creating groups in the world. So this is a very simple thing that is being done. All the builders are being invited to participate in this program. And builders all over the world are coming up who are ready to do this. Maharishi also has advised us all today to eat only organic food and don't eat poison. If you eat poison, it'll distort so many ways your health and your way of thinking. And the ultimate of that is Maharishi Vedic organic food, which adds to the organic food, which is free of poison, the positive influence of the Vedic melodies, which are the rhythms of the laws of nature in the transcendental field that administer the whole creation. So this is important, and the way for all the poverty of the world to be eliminated is through this system of growing such food in the poorest countries of the world, selling it to the wealthy countries that have poisoned their land, and then creating so much wealth that houses can be constructed for all the poorest quarter of the population of the world. These good houses, these fortunate houses that will lift them up out of poverty and enable them to have a good, peaceful, restful, fulfilled life. This is Maharishi's beautiful plan for the whole world. And again, he's not waiting for governments. He's plunging in. He's doing whatever he is able to do, even though the governments may be completely deaf and unable to respond for all the previously mentioned reasons. So what Maharishi has given us the vision of then today is a floodlight that he is creating, that every country will be peaceful and integrated. This will answer all the questions that exist in the world. Other people are doing wrong in the government, and so many damaging things are being done, but we like to do right. So this is what Maharishi is doing in spite of everything that is happening in the world that is wrong. He is doing what is right for the world. A very simple philosophy, very simple techniques that can completely change, are completely changing the destiny of the human race. So Maharishi has advised the press to continue telling their governments all of this, all of these opportunities. Tell them 1,000 times, not once, but 1,000 times, because as world consciousness rises, them hearing it over and over again, it'll come to the point where they are awake enough to hear the truth, to hear what they can do, what they must do in their parental role for their whole population. Maharishi said the global country of world peace that he founded is an imaginary organization that he's very, very proud of. And in fact, all countries are imaginary. They have imaginary borders that are created that divide people from each other. And along those borders, conflicts are created. So Maharishi has founded a global country of world peace, where there are no borders, where all peace-loving people of the world can reside together in one grand unified wholeness. This is what is coming, a grand unified world. It's going to happen, a glorious world, a peaceful and happy world, even in the midst of the hopelessness of the centuries past. Such a beautiful hope Maharishi has given to us all today. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, and thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that beautiful summary of Maharishi's message of today. And I would like to conclude this week by giving a very brief but inspiring glimpse at the pace of global transformation, especially in the past 4 months, when Maharishi launched the first stage of his global peace program to purify world consciousness and prepare the way for heaven on earth, Sat Yuga. Maharishi announced that he had established growing numbers of Vedic pundits in India whose daily performance of yogic flying and yagya would create coherence in the collective consciousness of India. With the rise of collective consciousness, Maharishi said, there would be a corresponding rise of positivity and harmony in India and increasingly throughout the region and the world. It is clear that Maharishi's program has produced its intended peaceful effect, as there is an unmistakable trend towards reduced conflict and increasing friendliness throughout the world, in particular in the former major hotspots or nuclear flashpoints all across the globe. This week in Asia, we continue to see the strongest influence of coherence created by the Vedic pundits in India. India and Pakistan are continuing in their steady march towards peace, as is China and Taiwan. And what would have been unimaginable even a few months ago, the crisis over the North Korea's repeated threats to test and use nuclear weapons is abating as coherence rises on the Korean peninsula, and friendliness replaces 50 years of bitter rivalry. Reuters reports the Koreas, warming ties between old foes. Newsweek reports extraordinary relationship between the two Koreas. It reads, this is an extraordinary moment in the relationship between the two Koreas. This week, for the first time since 1945, North and South Koreans jointly commemorated their liberation from Japanese colonizers at the end of World War II. The North Korean delegation visited the South Korean parliament, another first. The two countries also staged a joint cultural event where 50,000 spectators chanted, "Unified Korea, Unified Korea." The love fest doesn't stop there. Trade is reaching new heights, and cooperation across the demilitarized zone is proceeding at dizzying speed. What an extraordinary change. Reuters reports South, North Korea reach agreement on farm talks. The Jungang Ilbo, South Korean paper, reports South Korea's opinion of North improves dramatically. The New York Times reports North Korea opening door to tourists. The biggest stumbling block to peace there had been the North's stubborn determination to pursue development of nuclear weapons and to test them against the wishes of the entire world community. Now, suddenly and unexpectedly, the North is sending a message of conciliation. Washington Post reports, North Korea may be willing to drop nuclear plan. The Washington Post then reports, nations make good progress in North Korean talks. The drive for a six-nation agreement to end North Korea's nuclear weapons program is quite unexpectedly picking up speed. This is an amazing and historic and crucial change for the world. The rise of coherence in the collective consciousness of the region has brought an end to more than 30 years of bloody fighting between the Indonesian government and the Aceh rebels. This week, for the first time, Aceh joined in celebration of Indonesia's Independence Day. The Islam Online reports, Aceh celebrates Indonesia's Independence Day. 2 days after signing the peace agreement with the Indonesian government, Acehnese celebrated Indonesia's Independence Day alongside the Indonesian government, with gala festivals and cultural celebrations. Indonesian flags were hoisted in front of Acehnese homes in an unprecedented display of national unity. Again, an end to 30 years of bloody fighting there. The light of coherence radiating from India is continuing to show signs of dawning peace in the Middle East, where the evacuation of Israel from Gaza after 38 years of occupation has proceeded with totally unexpected speed and peace. BBC reports positive signs in Gaza. The evacuation of settlements is going faster and more smoothly than the Israeli government dared to hope. CNN reports Gaza evacuations peaceful. Israel on Sunday evacuated 3 Gaza settlements without a single violent incident. And the Independent of the UK reports, last of the settlers leave without a fight. Each week, we also see how the rise of world consciousness is bringing peace to war-torn areas, and each week we see how the sign of coherence is bringing an end to outdated principles of administration. This week we see the growing recognition of the failures of democracy, how it divides a nation against itself, how a democratic government can easily be bought off by special economic interests, and how it fails to deliver on its promise to bring a better quality of life to the people. The false allure of democracy, once tantalizing to developing countries, is fading fast. The Wall Street Journal reports, Arab world grows indifferent to democracy. Finance 24 reports, democracy a disaster for South Africa poor. It reads, South Africa's transition to democracy over the last decade has been a disaster for the country's poor. Secretary Tony Ehrenreich said this week, economically, our democratic government has overseen a disaster. 40% of our people are unemployed, and the inequalities between the rich and poor have grown rapidly. And the National Post of Canada reports, Latin America losing faith in democracy. I would like to conclude this brief summary by taking a look at the past 4 months of Maharishi's Global Peace Program. As a longtime observer of global trends, I find it utterly amazing how dramatically the world has changed since Maharishi launched his Global Peace Program just a few months ago. Consider that, number one, nearly 60 years of hostility between India and Pakistan, hostilities that instigated 3 wars and brought the world to the brink of nuclear confrontation, are suddenly and unexpectedly being resolved. Also, nearly 60 years of hostilities between China and Taiwan that also fueled threats of nuclear war are suddenly and unexpectedly being resolved. Also, nearly 50 years of tension between North and South Korea that also threatened to trigger nuclear war are suddenly and unexpectedly being resolved. And after 30 years of occupation, which fueled countless terrorist attacks, the Israeli government has peacefully left the Gaza without one single violent act, suddenly and unexpectedly giving rise to hopes of a real peace in this embattled, war-torn area of the world. So to the world press, I say, remember, all of these sudden and unexpected developments have taken place simultaneously during the same 4-month period. And all for the very same reason, the rise of coherence in world consciousness brought about by Maharishi's Vedic pundits in India who are enlivening total natural law, the constitution of the universe, the Veda, in world consciousness, and thereby bringing the life of every individual and every nation spontaneously in accord with natural law. What we are seeing today, as Maharishi said, is just the beginning. From today onward, week after week, month after month, the world press will continue to report the rise of coherence in world consciousness. Every individual will soon rise to enlightenment. Every nation will rise to invincibility. The whole world family will rise to enjoy permanent world peace. Sat Yuga, heaven on earth for all mankind. The global press can accelerate this global transformation, as Maharishi said today, simply by bringing the message of Maharishi's peace-promoting programs to the attention of the leadership of the world. It's not enough to report it once. Although today we saw the reports were widespread and spectacular, we also said, we heard from Maharishi the truth, that there's so much inertia, so much sleepiness, so drowsy are our national leaders and the collective consciousness as a whole that you've got to shake them many times to arouse them out of the depths of sleep. This news is not today's news. It is the news of all times. Until the world has entered a state of permanent peace, the fact that there is a proven road that can bring world peace and invincibility within at most a matter of months is news and will continue to be news until the world is permanently transformed. So I thank the press for their extraordinary coverage of this year, this month, and especially this week. But I implore the press that your responsibility to your community is not complete until the problems have been erased, until Maharishi's programs have been implemented, and we see an end to the unrest and strife and ill health and all the problems born of mistakes, born of life not in accord with natural law, born of ineffective education, born of improper orientation and layout of homes that are not aligned with natural law, not according to Maharishi's Tapatya Ved. The solutions are easy. All that is necessary is to bring this knowledge again and again to the leadership of the world, wakes up and adopts these programs and transforms the quality of life of people everywhere throughout the world. I would especially like to thank today His Holiness Maharishi for his beautiful answers to the questions from the press. Maharishi has been with us week after week for well over 3 years without a break, answering questions from all over the world on these press conferences. I'd like to thank my co-host, His Excellency Dr. Bevan Morris, for his beautiful remarks of today. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this global press conference and invite you to join us again next week, where once again the global press will have an opportunity to address their questions directly to His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Until next week, Jai Gurudev.